Okay, let's dive into something fascinating. We've gotten our hands on an advanced digital copy of a new book from Bald & Bunker's Network, LLC, and our mission today is to really take a deep dive into its pages for you.
That's right. We're cracking open the Cult of Zeta R, and, well, our goal is to unpack the plot, explore the key characters, and dig into the pretty unsettling themes this narrative presents.
Think of this as your shortcut, getting straight to the heart of what this story is all about, directly from the material we've got.
And it's important to remember, our entire discussion today is based solely on the text excerpts provided to us. We're looking at the core elements, the foundation laid out in this initial material.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. According to the text, it's a deep look at the protagonist, Zachary. And what the material immediately gives us is this, well, incredibly bleak and disturbing picture of his childhood.
It really does. It ties his later actions directly back to profound early trauma, and that's quite a fascinating narrative choice right off the bat. The neglect described is intense.
Yeah, like his mother's coldness.
Exactly. Her coldness, constant verbal abuse, and even calculated physical beatings. The material is chillingly specific about the indifference behind these actions, not rage.
Indifference, wow.
And his father, a complete absence, just not there, leaving Zachary utterly isolated.
So how did young Zachary even cope with this? The text highlights his intense isolation at school, not really bullied, just ignored, invisible, kind of.
Yeah, and this isolation seems to have led him to become a keen, almost detached observer, specifically noting the subtle cruelty of children.
Interesting observation. And that connects to his development.
Absolutely. That observation becomes a key part. We see his escape into reading, specifically horror and fantasy. He just devours tales of violence, retribution, stuff like that.
So not just escape, then?
Apparently not. The material suggests these weren't just stories. They fueled an internal rage and fostered this perverse admiration for ruthless power and control. He seemingly saw these narratives as a kind of grim blueprint.
A blueprint for navigating the world.
Sort of. A world that had shown him only cruelty, So what does this early life mean for the character? The material suggests this relentless cycle, this abuse and isolation, it fundamentally changed him.
How so?
His eyes, once described as bright, turned cold and calculating. It's like the boy he once was became buried beneath all that trauma.
Okay, wow. So the narrative then takes a sharp turn, right?
Right.
Kicking off the main plot with the truly shocking event.
Right. Zachary murders his mother, but what happens immediately after is, well, utterly bizarre, according to the material.
Bizarre how?
The text describes the immediate aftermath from his perspective. He expected some kind of relief, maybe catharsis, like in those stories he read. But he felt only this profound emptiness. And then, the horrifying reality the next morning, the body was gone, vanished, without a trace.
Gone.
Just gone.
Just going. And the material goes into incredible detail about the crime scene. It was meticulously clean, devoid of any sign of the violence. It baffled everyone, even the forensic team mentioned in the text, Miller, I think. Right, Miller. So it was like it never even happened. That's right. Yeah, that's striking.
It absolutely is. And this inexplicable disappearance has a deep psychological impact on Zachary. The initial panic quickly gives way to this chilling fascination.
Fascination, not just fear.
No, it's more complex. The missing body isn't just a problem to solve. The material frames it as a violation of natural order, a distortion of reality. And that resonates disturbingly with his morbid curiosity.
Okay.
The clean scene starts to feel deliberate, hinting at some kind of silent presence behind it all. This inexplicable disappearance becomes his terrifying obsession.
He doesn't keep this terrifying obsession to himself, though, does he? The material tells us he finds an unlikely outlet, or maybe a balm, as the text puts it.
Right, the anonymity of the internet.
Oh, okay.
He creates the online persona, Zeta R Recluse. The text suggests the online platform becomes his confessional, his stage, his pulpit. He's not just documenting a crime, he's actively crafting a narrative.
Like building a story.
Exactly, constructing a horrifying puzzle, and, in a way, his own identity online.
So what was his first post like about the murder?
It's described as a clinical account devoid of emotion, yet laced with this perverse pride. He details the planning, the execution, emphasizing precise movements, calculated actions, and a complete absence of remorse.
Chilling.
And material even mentions the post included blurry photographs of the clean room, specifically chosen to highlight that impossible cleanliness.
Wow. And how did people react to that?
Well, this is where things take another turn. The material shows how worship begins, subtly at first. Followers start seeing him as a symbol of rebellion, almost a dark deity.
A dark deity. Really?
Yeah, someone who defied norms and exposed what they perceived as the futility of justice. The initial comments are described as full of awe and admiration. It's quite disturbing.
And this online presence is really where the cult starts to take shape then. Almost accidentally at first, feeding into that need for power he had.
Seems that way. As this online thing grows, the material introduces some of the early followers, individuals with distinct personalities drawn into Zeta R Recluse's world.
Okay, like who?
Well, there's Nocturne, described as disturbingly poetic. Seems fascinated by the disappearances, praises the artistic execution, even hints at identifying with Zachary somehow.
Okay.
Then, in contrast, there's Absolution. Their posts are clinical, analytical, devoid of emotion, dissecting methods, interpreting occult symbolism. It's a chillingly detached perspective.
Very different types.
Totally. The text also mentions Serafina joins later, apparently seeking solace in his nihilistic worldview.
So what drew these diverse people in? Was there a common thread?
The material explicitly points to a deep-seated psychological vulnerability, a kind of gaping void within them that Zachary's darkness seemed to fill.
Right. That makes a horrible kind of sense.
Yeah.
And Zachary, does he lean into this?
He does. He starts cultivating this worship. It's subtle initially, then he begins incorporating occult symbolism into his posts, his rhetoric.
Upping the ante.
Yeah. He hints the vanishings aren't just his doing, but maybe sacrifices, offerings to a larger, more ancient power. The material describes him subtly guiding followers toward ritualistic behavior, even implicitly demanding sacrifices in his cryptic messages.
Okay, this is where it gets even darker, isn't it?
It really does. The sacrifices escalate dramatically. The material details them becoming increasingly grotesque, victims chosen for perceived transgressions.
Transgressions according to who?
Yeah.
Zachary. The cult.
Exactly. And the methods become more ritualistic, more horrifying, reflecting the growing influence of this ancient entity. The text mentions someone named Malak leading rituals.
Malak.
And it specifically details the horrifying sacrifice of Alara involving an obsidian knife with runes, and another, Anya the artist, whose sacrifice was apparently designed to enhance the entity's influence on creativity.
Oh.
The text notes cryptic symbols appearing on her canvases that eerily mirrored the runes on the knife used. It's incredibly disturbing detail.
So there's a reason for this escalation, beyond just murder.
The terrifying reason, according to the material, is that this ancient entity is literally feeding off these blood sacrifices. It's exerting growing influence over Zachary, manipulating him toward ever more depraved acts.
So Zachary's not entirely in control anymore.
It seems less and less so. The entity is described as something dark, something ancient, beginning to stir. The rituals aren't just murder, they're framed as sacred offerings to appease their dark god.
And the symbols.
Symbols like the seven-pointed star and the Ouroboros become increasingly prominent in the cult's practices, woven throughout the narrative in the text.
This terrifying cult and the entity. Their influence isn't just local, right? The material suggests it spreads.
It does. Far beyond the cult's immediate vicinity. The text suggests a subtle global impact mentioned in various background details like news reports.
Like a kind of impact?
Escalating political tensions, unexplained economic crises, an unprecedented increase in natural disasters. But a key point the material stresses is that no one connects these disparate events to a singular malevolent source.
So it's insidious, hidden.
Totally. Masked as mere coincidence. The text also mentions unexplained disappearances plaguing cities across the globe, echoing Zachary's first act, but on a larger scale.
And what about the cult members themselves? Or people close?
The material details strange phenomena plaguing them. Objects moving inexplicably, doors slamming, whispers in empty rooms, a heavy, oppressive energy.
Creepy.
Very. But these occurrences are interpreted by the cult in their, blind faith as auspicious signs of their god's imminent arrival.
Wow. And the internet. Zachary's platform.
Right, think about that again. His confessions, according to the text, become viral, weaving this potent spell, preying on the vulnerabilities of the lonely, the desperate. The internet becomes a digital vector for the entity's terrifying spread.
So it's jumping from digital to affecting the real world.
Exactly. The material says this influence transcends digital and physical realms. It reaches into the collective consciousness, subtly influencing global events.
And the world doesn't notice.
Largely oblivious, the material concludes. News focuses on isolated events. Scientists seek natural explanations. Politicians look for gain. The end is near, and few are aware.
That's terrifying.
It paints a terrifying picture of the final ritual approaching, with Zachary seemingly just a hollow shell, an empty vessel replaced by pure, unadulterated evil.
Okay, but thankfully, the source material doesn't just leave humanity completely defenseless, right?
Yeah.
It introduces some resistance.
Yes, a group begins to form. We meet the initial members. Alias, who has a military background, focuses on securing resources, communication networks.
Practical stuff.
Right. Then Serafina uses her journalistic instincts and contacts to counter misinformation, fight the entity's control over media narratives.
Fighting the narrative, okay.
Then there's Father Michael. He's wrestling with his own spiritual crisis, but he uses religious symbolism, rhetoric drawn from the text itself to undermine the cult's ideology.
Interesting approach.
And Dr. Thorne, a scientist, monitors the situation remotely, using complex algorithms to try and predict things, adapt their strategy.
So a diverse team.
Yeah.
But the material also shows resistance within the cult. That's fascinating.
It is. It introduces Anya, a young woman initially drawn in seeking belonging, who starts to question the escalating violence, the suffering she sees. And Silas, a former academic, he analyzes Zachary's online confessions, starts spotting inconsistencies, manipulative undercurrents. He sees the whole narrative as a carefully crafted illusion.
So they connect. Anya and Silas.
Yeah, Anya confides in Silas, and their shared doubts grow. They represent this internal fracture within the cult, a slow erosion of belief.
Do the others notice? The zealous ones?
The material suggests they do. The higher-ranking cultists see it as a threat and respond with increased brutality, accusations of heresy, and brutal punishments. The text even implies some doubters end up as sacrifices themselves.
Grim. So this all leads to a direct confrontation.
It does. The material describes the resistance launching an attack, but it's not framed as a brute force assault, more like a carefully choreographed ballet of deception and precision.
Okay, how does that play out?
Well, Alias leads the tactical side. Dr. Thorne monitors remotely, adjusting algorithms in real time, feeding intel.
And Father Michael.
His contribution is crucial. The material highlights him engaging in a psychological fight against Zachary, challenging the fundamental principles of his ideology with truth and faith, hitting them where he's vulnerable.
A multi-pronged attack. Does it work?
This is where the story gets really intense. This combined assault, physical, technological, psychological, it weakens Zachary. The material says his mind fractures.
Lectures?
Yeah, the entity's influence on him ebbs, and his carefully constructed persona crumbled, exposing him as nothing more than a broken, rage-filled man. The monster facade drops.
Wow. What does that do to the cult?
It triggers a cascade effect. The cult fractures, members question their allegiance, internal conflicts erupt into open rebellion. They start fighting each other. Total chaos. And Silas is vital here, managing to shut down most of the cult's communication networks, isolating the remaining pockets, cutting the head off, digitally speaking.
Okay. And then there's a pivotal moment, a ritual.
Right. The material describes Alias performing a counter-ritual during the chaos. He uses specific symbolic offerings mentioned in the text, a teddy bear, a photograph, a wooden bird.
What do they represent?
Human resilience and unwavering hope, according to the text. Simple things, but powerful symbols against the darkness.
Does it work? Is there a cost?
There's a terrible cost. The material makes it clear Alias dies in this act. It's described as a sacrifice of a different kind, the ultimate price of victory.
Oh, man.
But his act, using those specific artifacts imbued with symbolic meaning, it's said to weaken the entity fragment controlling Zachary. It's a crucial blow.
And after Alias.
The material mentions Ben appearing alongside Anya after Elias's death. They're working together, with Ben frantically trying to rebuild communication equipment amidst the ruins.
So the immediate battle might be over, but it doesn't sound like a clean victory.
Not at all. The material tells us the silence in the ravaged crypt is heavy, not victorious. The entity is gone, but its absence feels like a terrifying shift. Something's changed fundamentally.
Gone, but it's not really gone.
Exactly. According to the ancient text referenced in the material, the entity wasn't banished, but fragmented.
Fragmented, like broken into pieces.
Sort of. Its essence was splintered, scattered across the world, seeping into the very fabric of existence. The ritual intended to bind it had instead shattered its form. A catastrophic miscalculation, perhaps.
And this entity, the material gives it a name.
It clarifies it's not a simple being, but a manifestation of a primordial evil, identified as Yaldabaoth, or at least a fragment of it, an ancient cosmic force that preys on fear and despair.
Yaldabaoth, okay.
The text states the cult's actions, the ritual, unwittingly provided the entity with the power to break free in this fragmented way.
So this fragmentation is key to what happens next.
Absolutely. The material explains its influence can now manifest in countless ways. A creeping dread, twisting minds, feeding on fear wherever it finds root. This fragmented power seeks new vessels.
New vessels?
Well,
like people.
presumably. And the material confirms the cult network was global, its influence stretching far and wide, so there are potentially many places for these fragments to take hold.
Which leads to difficult questions for the survivors. Like Anya and Ben.
Really difficult moral questions. They're left hunting individuals who are themselves described as victims of the entity's manipulation. The text explicitly poses the question, are they righteous avengers or merciless executioners?
That's a heavy burden.
It states this dilemma leaves them with a bitter taste, questioning their own actions, their judgments. It's not black and white anymore.
And that connects back to how the entity operates.
Right. The material described its methods, exploiting pre-existing psychological vulnerabilities, magnifying trauma, using fear, despair, a longing for belonging to recruit followers, feeding on their pain.
So it blurs the line between victim and perpetrator.
Exactly. The text suggests this blurs the line between free will and manipulation, making the moral implications for the survivors incredibly complex and gray. There are no easy answers.
So the survivors, they're dealing with the immediate aftermath, but also this ongoing fragmented threat. And the psychological damage must be immense.
Profound and widespread in their community, according to the material. It describes pervasive fear, paranoia, depression, even suicidal thoughts cropping up.
It's awful.
It specifically mentions the vulnerability of the children. Notes Alara becoming this tireless caretaker, but their fear, their twitches, serve as a constant reminder of the lingering effects.
And the threat isn't entirely gone.
No. Isolated cult pockets and rumors of the entity's return persist, fueling anxiety. Even basic community functions, like their council, struggle with distrust, according to the material. It's hard to rebuild trust after something like this.
But there are attempts at healing. The material shows that too.
Yes, paths towards healing begin to emerge. Ben, the pragmatist, focuses on establishing support groups and trauma therapy sessions, adapting techniques, emphasizing confronting the past, fostering shared responsibility.
Practical steps.
And the text mentions the physical rebuilding shelters. Gardens is intertwined with emotional healing, symbolizing reclaiming their lives, planting seeds of hope, quite literally.
What about individual healing? Anya.
Alara. We see glimpses. Anya struggles with paralyzing anxiety and guilt from repressed memories, including these disturbing visions of her own participation in rituals.
Oh, wow.
But she finds tentative steps forward through organizing her physical surroundings, journaling, trying to create order. Alara's art becomes a conduit for self-expression, with the material mentioning her painting a phoenix rising from ashes, a powerful image.
And the children.
They find recovery through expressive arts therapy, creating narratives where they are brave heroes, reclaiming their own stories.
It sounds like a really long road.
The material describes this collective healing exactly like that, a long and winding road with setbacks, moments of despair, but also moments of quiet triumph, shared laughter, unexpected joy. They learn to lean on each other, finding strength and shared vulnerability.
What about the original resistance team? Thorne, Michael, Sterling. Are they still active?
The material tracks them too, detailing their continued work post-ritual. It describes something called the resonant dissonance process.
Resonant dissonance, what's that?
It sounds complex. A blend of ritual and scientifically advanced technology led by Thorne, Michael, and Sterling. It involved ancient texts, incantations, spiritual attunement, all aimed at the fragmented entity.
Did it work?
According to the text, it resulted in a gradual unraveling and weakening of Yaldabaoth's influence globally, lessening the psychic disturbances, the strange phenomena, a slow counterattack on a global scale.
So they're still fighting. Individually, too.
Yeah. Dr. Thorne's ongoing research, the material says, delves into the entity as primordial chaos, feeding on fear, despair, blurring science and the supernatural, seeking ways to disrupt that connection.
And Sterling.
Agent Sterling is described as building a clandestine organization, a silent sentinel against future threats, finding solace, purpose, in duty, and meticulous planning, preparing for the long haul.
Father Michael? How's his faith?
Profoundly shaken, the text says, but strangely strengthened. He focuses on community healing, empathy. His church becomes a beacon of hope.
So the material talks about a new era, new dawn, but not a simple happy ending.
Definitely not. The material clarifies what this new dawn signifies: a fragile recovery, built on resilience, collective healing, and integrating the past, not forgetting it.
The scars remain.
Exactly. The text explicitly states the scars remain, but they're viewed as badges of honor, symbols of their survival, their resilience.
And Zachary's ultimate fate.
Consumed by the very entity he awakened. His body vanished like his mother's. His online legacy became a chilling cautionary tale, a stark reminder of unchecked rage, blind faith. The cult itself just disintegrates, its followers scattering.
And the wider world, still oblivious.
Largely, according to the material, the strange events that hinted at the entity's influence, they fade into unsolved mysteries. Only a few whispers remain among those who actually know the terrifying truth.
So a core message we took from the material is the ongoing nature of the threat and the commitment of the survivors.
Absolutely. It describes the silent vigil maintained by individuals like Thorne, Michael, and Sterling, and implicitly by Ben and Anya in their own community, in their own way.
The victory wasn't final then.
No, it was the start of an ongoing commitment, a solemn vow to protect humanity from these unseen forces. The material highlights the harsh lessons learned, the dangers of unchecked power, the intoxicating allure of forbidden knowledge, the blind faith that sacrifices reason.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean based on this text we have?
It suggests humanity survived, yes, but is forever changed by the experience, and must remain vigilant. The fight against this fragmented, pervasive evil isn't over.
But they're ready.
They are ready. Their quiet determination, their unwavering resolve, it's presented as a testament to human resilience.
Okay, so we've taken a pretty deep dive into this advanced copy of the Cult of Zeta R. We've explored Zachary's disturbing origins, the bizarre vanishing acts, the birth of that online cult.
The emergence of an ancient entity feeding on fear, the global catastrophe it hinted at, the desperate resistance, the costly victory through sacrifice.
A struggle for healing afterwards, and this ongoing fight against a fragmented, pervasive evil. It's
a lot. It really is. The material provides a fascinating, albeit dark, look at how trauma can be exploited, how quickly reality can warp, when faced with the inexplicable.
Yeah, and that complex interplay of technology, belief, and these ancient forces.
Definitely. The emphasis on psychological manipulation and the collective trauma, it leaves a lasting impression. It suggests the most insidious threats might work from within us.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Even if the world is largely unaware, like the text suggests, are these unseen battles against fear